The prime thing is you have to win.
There you go. There you go. That's what I'm talking about. Hey, Mark, settle down a little bit.
All right, welcome back to the Just Win podcast. I'm Ted Nguyen. That's Marshall Newhouse, and we are joining you guys after the Raiders just got demolished in Kansas City, 31-0. And man, it is sad because the Raiders just find new ways of embarrassing themselves. Like today, they ran only 30 offensive plays. I think that is the fewest amount of plays a team has ran, an NFL team has ran since 2002. Got that stat from Nate Tice. But yeah, I mean, the Chiefs were an offensive machine. They were so efficient getting to third and shorts and converting. And yeah, I mean, the Raiders couldn't stop them. And offensively, like they just never got converted third down. They couldn't get anything going. And this is the result of what happens. Marshall, what are your initial thoughts?
Yeah, it was the Raiders played bad, period, hard stop. They're missing a lot, period, hard stop. We don't know from the top down what the plan is, period, hard stop. And also, the Chiefs are about to hit a stride. They are as healthy as they have been in the last 3 or 4 years with weapons on offense. Maybe they're missing a pass rusher. There was talk of them maybe trying to go get a pass rusher or running back, but even a Pacheco not fully, healthy, and Karlaftis kind of coming in here and there. They're just dangerous. And now, Pat literally was in for 5 drives, 5 drives, 5 touchdowns, efficient, used his legs to move the chains. Like they are what good, efficient, like taking what someone gives you offense looks like. And the Raiders were happy to give it to them. And then on offense, not sustaining any drives. I mean, they probably ran more plays on offense in warmups than they did in the actual game. And that's crazy. That's hard to do. That someone asked Pete Carroll in the post game press conference, did you think about getting Geno under center? And we've talked about that in this pod, and he's like, yeah, of course, like that was part of our plan, but we couldn't even get to it. Like when you run that few plays and you can't get anything going, you can't even get to it. You can't run block. You can't even get Genty involved. Just all around really, really bad. And so you could look at it from, okay, one bad game, against a tough opponent, yes, but this is a continuation of a lot of stuff this season. And I think Raiders fans would be less just like frustrated about the entire situation if there was a recognizable style and identity they were trying to play with. And I ultimately want to like be on that point of who are they? When they hired Pete Carroll, I was excited. Now, we weren't doing this podcast. You and I hadn't talked, but I was like, oh, after you lose Gruden the way you did, and with Pierce, hiring a guy like Pete, who you at least at the very least know he wants guys to compete. They want to play hard defense, tough defense, and then they lived all those years with Russell Wilson and Marshawn Lynch and all that stuff. So, but they had an identity. The Seahawks led under Pete Carroll had an identity, and so you're like, all right, at the very least, it'll take some time, but a culture will develop, an identity will develop. Well, here we are. Yeah, it's early, but still, we don't know who they are, who they want to be, who they're trying to be, and that to me is more alarming than even getting blown out like you did. Because sometimes you just get blown out. Teams are good, especially the Chiefs, but this is a continuation, as I said.
Yeah, and this is the only. I'm not giving them an excuse, but it's hard to figure out who you are when you don't have like your main guys on the field.
Yeah.
As mentioned, Brock Bowers is still missing from this game. He should be back after the bye, hopefully healthy. And then Jacoby Myers, there's trade rumors swirling, but he seemed to try to play pregame, didn't play, and the Raiders are already starved enough for weapons as is. And then, then you don't have Myers right before the game. I think they expected him to play, and he didn't play. So, you need everything you got to face this Kansas City Chiefs, especially when they're just healthy. They didn't, and the penalties were frustrating as well.
Yeah.
Like you just can't win when you're you're getting put behind the sticks with penalties. Every time you make a third down stop, you get a penalty, and some people might complain like about the Chiefs and getting favorable calls, but at the same time, you look at the replays, they're happening. You can't put yourselves in position to, where you're getting those calls. So they're being undisciplined. They're not executing, and it was just ugly. And they just don't have the talent to overcome that, especially against this Chiefs team. They were playing really soft defense. They're trying not to get beat over the top, and
Mhm.
they're just getting peppered underneath by um, a bunch of they're what the Chiefs do. They're extremely efficient when it comes to trying to pepper you underneath with these short passes. Patrick Mahomes could kind of become a master of the quick game and getting these passes to his receivers and RPOs, and then you add Rashee Rice, who was
Yeah.
very good to the equation, and the Raiders were the first team to see this version of the Chiefs with Rashee Rice. It's just too hard to overcome, and like you mentioned, it's just frustrating when you don't have an identity and you continually shoot yourself in the foot.
Yeah, I mean, I'm even they're trying to get going there in the first or second quarter, and Jinty had a nice run, and it gets called back because Jack Besh has a procedure penalty, an alignment penalty. And you're just like, guys, like we can't even get off the ground here. And it's one thing to say, good teams don't have that stuff happen regularly, but it feels like, yeah, people complain about the Chiefs, but the Chiefs are in positions all the time and they put pressure on other people, and other people make more mistakes. And it just seems like they get calls because they're forcing the issue. They play all the way up to the line with the rules, and they're just taking more shots and they're more aggressive. And usually that's the more aggressive team gets the benefit more often than not. There's not a deep conspiracy, I promise you. There's not. And yeah, so ultimately, Raiders don't have an identity. I think part of the identity can come from talent, and not having Brock Bowers, as you said, is just such a huge deal. Now we're waiting to hear about Max Crosby. That's a huge deal. Um, and from the GM personnel department, I guarantee you they understand that they had a lot of cap space last year. They're going to have a lot moving forward this year, but they have so many holes to fill.
Yeah.
I am not sure where they even start, to be honest with you. I mean, you would like to think that a franchise quarterback going fishing for that somewhere is where you start, but you know, so many holes to fill. They might get some guys off the books depending on how they treat Geno. Pete loves Geno. We'll see how Spytek views Geno. We'll see how Tom Brady, if he's involved, he views Geno. Because Geno, I've stuck up for him because I understand there's context. He's just not been good enough. And so, is he worth the money? Especially when you're looking at the what they got in return and what they gave away, and Sam Darnold and what's happening up in Seattle right now. You're just like, well, what did we get sold a lemon almost? And Geno and his peak has just came and went. And yeah, just the 30 plays. I can't even imagine. I've had some stinker of offensive games. Sometimes, again, that happens, but to not even feel like you had a chance and they just squeezed the life out of the entire game. I don't know how Pete wasn't pulling his hair out. He's a more composed man than I am. That was hard to watch. We when you and I are texting and we're talking more about the color analyst and the play-by-play guy than the game, then the game is out of touch and out of reach. So, well, we'll see where they go from here. We could talk a little bit about the next game and the bye and who might be coming back and where they can even fix. But there's really not a whole lot to even say because the issues are so glaring. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree. I think also, like, not only did they get outplayed, all the breaks went to the Chiefs too. Like they
Pat almost threw 3 or 4 picks. I mean,
yeah,
it happens like that sometimes.
it's just crazy. Like when it rains, it pours. It was just I've never seen a game like that where you get outplayed and then every single break goes to the Chiefs. Like they had a fumble, like Devin White had a great strip, and then the ball goes right to the Chiefs defender. So it's rough. I mean, I think at this point you got to start looking at some rookies and like Caillou Blue. I don't want to put all the to get on his case so much because a lot of Raiders played bad, but I expected for him to have a short leash and for them to want to see what Darian Porter could have done in his spot because he's younger and he actually played pretty well when he had to. And Kai Blue was he just didn't play good in the first half. And I think there should be a emphasis on seeing some of the younger players now. But I mean, like Charles Grant could be really far behind. Like there's some tackle prospects that you might have to wait till they get the playbook, some of their technique, because you can't just put them out there and get everybody else killed. But maybe Rogers, the guard, is he ready to play? You really got to start looking at it. And I think some of the young receivers are getting playing time already. And some of the young defensive linemen are starting to get in there, but you got to start increasing their reps at some point.
Yeah, that if indeed you feel like, all right, we're outgunned, we don't have enough ammunition. Well, you got to find out what you do have, so that you're not going. We don't want to fast forward through the season. We got a lot of games left, but you don't want to get to a point where you don't even know what you have in the building as you're trying to build this program out. But I start to wonder the patience that's going to be given to this regime after today's performance, because we saw Antonio Pierce's teams be feisty with Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew, who they tried to get a revenge touchdown on today. And at the very least, I don't know if he was the right head coach. I don't begrudge them for moving on from him, but they came with an edge. They played with an edge. There was some kind of idea of who they were going into the game, especially a game like against the Chiefs. And today was just so lifeless. It felt like there wasn't anything on the line, and that kind of boggles my mind. Listen, yeah, they're the probably the best team in the league. They got a target on their back. Then go big game hunting. Like, I don't know what you're holding off for. It feels like who you're waiting for, who you're trying to ease into this game. It's week 8. I don't know. Tell me what I'm missing in that. And I could see Max's frustration week to week. A couple of the veterans, I'm imagining that locker room is starting to really question, what all this is for, because teams lose. Sometimes you're in a rough stretch, but if there's clarity of purpose, that really can set the tone for how you prepare, how you practice, how guys show up, how they play for each other. Hey, man, yeah, losing sucks. No one wants to do that. You're putting body online. But if I'm doing it in service of something more than just a check, if I understand what we're trying to build here, that's a different story. But I don't know what the plan is. And I'm very curious how they address that moving forward.
Yeah. With that, let's get into some of the questions, because some of the questions will address some of the, some of the points that you made. And first question from Paul Rader asked, Ted and Marshall, do you think Mark Davis is going to clean house? And I don't think he's going to clean house. But I also did not expect us to be in a place where it would even be a thought at this point of the season.
Yeah.
I still think it's like far-fetched because of how many coaches have been fired recently with the Raiders. I think they'll probably give him a longer leash, but at the same time, like, I did not expect it to be this ugly this early on. I think this bye week will tell you a lot about this coaching staff. I mean, they're 2-4 at this point, so it's not exactly the end of the world, but and we also, everyone expected the Raiders to get blown out by the Chiefs. But it was a lot uglier than most people thought. But I think this bye week it's the typical time when you start on-ramping rookies, and you have a little bit more time to kind of install your offense or your defense or whatever. So we'll see how they are coming out of this bye week. I mean, I still think it's far-fetched, but if it's really ugly after this bye week and finishing the season, like, who knows? Who knows? I don't think it's going to happen, but I would say there's potential for it to happen. And I did not think we'd be here at this point when they hired Pete Carroll.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing talking about professional sports owners, because in reality, they don't answer to anyone else. And so all we can do is speculate based on precedents, how they've operated in the past. And so, he's not a guy who's got a especially quick trigger. He definitely doesn't wait forever, but he doesn't have an especially quick trigger. So a one and done doesn't feel like that's on the table. But then again, like, so much of that could be emotion based. He could be embarrassed by this, or what could come the rest of the season and make a decision. That doesn't feel like Mark Davis. So we'll see. But that doesn't mean under the head coach he feels pressure to make moves. Chip Kelly, I think, has bullets in the chamber, but I haven't really seen him. I haven't seen him call plays like the upper echelon of the NFL. Obviously, doesn't have the most talent. You lose your star tight end after week one. Cool, we get it. But adapt. I've seen Matt LaFleur on a short week create a winning game plan for Malik. What's his last name? He came from Tennessee.
Willis.
Malik Willis. I've seen that happen. And so this is the NFL. This is supposed to be the best of the best. So, I don't have a ton of patience for Chip, especially a guy who's been around. He's been both in the pros and the college at the highest level. He's been everywhere. It's not like he's a green coordinator. And so maybe there's shifts that can be made there. But yeah, to put a bow on it, I don't believe they'll, do anything drastic. But it's got people's attention for sure.
Yeah. Gigi asks, will the Raiders fire Chip Kelly or the O-line coach or something? I don't think there's going to be any in-season firings, but I will say that, like you said, you can work around injuries, and we've seen the elite offensive coordinators in this league do it. We've seen Kyle Shanahan do it with Mac Jones and endless amount of backup quarterbacks. We've seen LaFleur do it. We've seen Ken O'Connell do it. And Chip Kelly is the highest paid assistant coach.
I didn't know that. Is he really? Oh,
yes.
Man.
They paid him $8 million to be the offensive coordinator. So, like,
I picked up a clipboard, bro.
Yeah. So, I mean, if I get it. There's a lot of things that are working against you, but when you're getting paid that much money, you got to figure out some answers. And we've talked about it. It might be Chip Kelly trying to. It might take some time for Chip Kelly to acclimate back into the NFL, but man, it's rough when you're getting paid this much money and you're coming up with nothing at this point of the season as far as trying to help your team out. So we'll see what happens after the bye week. Maybe the Raiders won't clean house, but there will be questions about Chip Kelly after the season if he can't find any answers, especially with his salary.
And then, on making moves kind of underneath the head coach and coordinators, you've got two guys at minimum, as far I might be missing someone, that have that little nepotism gnat buzzing in your ear of like, what is the value they bring? And I'm speaking of Brendan Carroll and Chip Kelly's son, who are involved in this staff. So there's loyalty there, but there's also questions because the product on the field is not there. So maybe there's some conversations about that. Who knows? So, but yeah, Chip Kelly, I didn't know that about his salary. That screams someone you want to keep around and not pay out. We're seeing all these crazy college buyouts. That happens in the NFL too. It's just quieter. Guys are getting paid for years after they leave. So, that's why there's not a ton of drastic decisions unless an owner's real pissed and something's really afoot. It's difficult to make such drastic decisions.
Yeah, and Bill Callahan is free now. He got fired from the Titans, and I don't know what his relationship is with the Raiders, especially after he was fired after the disastrous Super Bowl and years after. But to me, the elite offensive line coaches are hard to find, and he was an elite offensive line coach in the league for a long time. Obviously, things didn't work out with the Tennessee Titans, but I mean, if you're willing to pay Chip Kelly that kind of money, I would be willing to pay Bill Callahan a lot of money to come fix this offensive line.
Yeah, it's worth a shot. There's nothing that's off the table. You can't put that product on the field and not have everything on the table. All
right, let's look at Jonathan Martinez's question. Let's talk a little bit about the future since the present is not looking too hot right now. The team is asked, we know, but can you tell us what we need in the draft? Just all defensive players and a QB of the future. I mean, we're definitely trending towards having a pick high enough to pick a quarterback. And I think, you can pick a quarterback and still have Geno Smith on a roster. But I mean, right now, there are not a lot of quarterbacks that could be in this environment and function at any level. So you also have to think about how do you support that quarterback with players around him. So right now, the offensive line is an issue. Can it look better with Colton Miller back? Can it look better with some more development? I don't know. But I mean, I think quarterback's definitely in the conversation in the first round.
So I'll just lay it out, and then, round by round, it depends on where you are and Spytek's and his staff's draft strategy. But I think you figure out, the quarterback situation with a young guy who will be on a cheap contract while you have Geno, and unless you offload Geno and you want to go fresh and give it to a guy that you trust. But that's a decent situation to go into. Getting quarterback. You had Genty last year. I think you get a guard and a tackle at the minimum, a guard who can, play all three interior, preferably, potentially, and a tackle. Listen, you don't have a ton of explosion in wide receivers, but I think those are players you could find in a more supplemental way later in the draft. And then defense, another pass rusher, and your defensive backfield. That's what we're talking about. So many holes. You've got Atlanta Roberts, who I've played with, and I like him, but he's a limited linebacker. He's there for specific reasons on this team. You need a guy who can cover in the modern NFL, and then you need guys in the back end. You've invested in some draft capital in DBs. I think you can never have enough of those. And you could field a decent team with a couple of impact rookies, but you have so much room to fill. And then obviously they've got a lot of cap space. So if they feel like either Geno has another year left in the tank where it's like, if we can get stability around him, we could make a run at this, then you go after guys in the free agency. And then you bolster with young guys who you develop. But everything can't be solved either all in the draft or all in free agency. That's the thing about a program is, what is our identity so that when we attain young guys, we know the development of the type of guy. Like, think about Sean McVay, and I keep wanting to call him Les Snead. Is that his guy? No, that's Kansas City. Who's McVay's GM in LA?
It's the F them picks guy. Blanking on his name right now.
Me too. Anyway, but I think they have a system where they that is our type of guy. They found a
Les Snead.
Okay, I got it right. It was Les Snead.
Yeah.
They found a guy like that. And it could be any position, but they know what they're looking for. Yep. And so the Raiders have to develop into what are we looking for so that when we get young guys, they're potential guys who are underrated, you can get value. And then in free agency, you're getting more developed players, but that came from another system. And when you know what you're looking for, then you can plug guys in a little bit better. And so we are really going to be curious to see what they are hoping to get from a player development standpoint. But I went through that. Obviously, quarterback, O-line, bolstering the O-line, defensive backfield, defensive line, and line. It's just a lot of holes to fill.
Yeah, and also, so Pete Carroll has say in personnel.
Okay.
He doesn't have final say.
Yeah.
But I just
so answer me this. So fans, if you're listening, so that means you've got potentially in the same room jockeying for say so Pete Carroll, Spytek, and Tom Brady. Is that what I'm hearing correctly? Does that sound like a clean setup? Not on its face. So they're going to have to very much figure out what they're trying to be moving forward from a personnel standpoint.
Yeah, because Brady definitely has opinions on personnel.
Yes.
Like, we've heard him talk about, quarterbacks he wants, and you could hear him on the broadcast with his philosophies. Spytek has his philosophies.
Mm-hmm.
Carroll has his philosophies. And I mean, I think Brady and Spytek probably align on some level because of their time in Tampa Bay, and obviously Brady hired him.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I have questions about Carroll and his say in personnel. I mean, like, we've seen things go haywire in Seattle, and as soon as he leaves Seattle, they have a great draft and things are back on track with Mike McDonald there. And then, he definitely has a say in some of the draft picks and people they brought in to the Raiders. Like, is he just not good with personnel? Like, should he just be out of that room and just let Spytek and Brady, worry about personnel?
That's a
Like,
legit, man.
yeah, I mean, like, he has a scheme, but like, it just, I don't know, like, the personnel that he's been choosing or the say that he's had, it just hasn't worked out.
Yeah, we're just looking from a result standpoint, from the end of his tenure in Seattle to now, what does he have to stand on? Honestly, the Legion of Boom at this point is 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, what do you have to stand on right now?
Yeah, and like, that only takes you so far. I feel like he's just been kind of like riding out the Legion of Boom and the credibility that comes from getting those players and making them fit in the system for so long, but we haven't seen like an act two as far as the Legion of Boom. Like, Geno Smith was good in Seattle, and they had some good years after Russell Wilson, but it's we just haven't seen him put together a good defense in a long, long time.
And like, from the Geno point, I'll say this and we can move on. He had, he got into a bad organization and looked really like a bust, looked really poor, and then got into a more stable situation and had kind of a peak year. But I think we swung the pendulum from, oh, this guy's awful, which he never was, to, oh, Geno might be a cusp quarterback, which I don't know if he really was either. He had a couple good years. And so he might just be a quarterback. But even an quarterback, we were watching the games. Jacoby Brissett almost leads the Cardinals to a victory over the Packers. Like, games can be won in the NFL with competent quarterback play without all your weapons. Like, I have less, patience just because you see it all the time for intact organizations that have an identity and that have a plan moving forward. There's not, it's not this secret unknown sauce to get wins in this league. It's really not.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not the end of the world. It was a very, very bad loss. I will say that.
You throw it in the toilet, you watch it, and you move on, because there's really not a lot of positive. There's no sunshine in that bowl right there.
And they're not going to fire everyone. It's not going to happen. So basically, you're stuck with this coaching staff, and you got to see what they can do after this bye week when they could put a little bit more of a stamp on a team. And I'll be honest, I'm a little bit more pessimistic about this coaching staff and what could happen from it than I was early in the season. But who knows? Maybe they make some changes during the bye week. Things get settled a little bit. You're not playing the Kansas City Chiefs, and they look a lot better. I think that's the only hope that you can have for this season. It might not be a playoff type of season, but you want to see development from some of the young players, and you want to see some competence from this coaching staff moving forward. And it's very early in the regime, but yeah, we'll see. But thank you for joining us. I know it was an ugly loss, and it's never good to hear about an ugly loss, but I see a lot of you guys are on here, so thank you so much for joining, for watching, and make sure you like and subscribe on YouTube, rate on Apple and Spotify, and we will I'll talk about the schedule for the bye week as far as this podcast on Twitter, so make sure you check that out. Marshall, great as always, and we will talk to you guys soon.
Appreciate y'all. Thanks, Ted.